Hello and welcome. In previous videos of Classic Bus Histories, we've looked at the Leyland Leopard and we've looked at the Volvo B58. And in the most recent video, we've even looked at the Volvo B10M. Now it seems like we've kind of forgotten something, doesn't it? When you think of a successful bus and coach chassis, what could that be? Well, of course, it's the Leyland Tiger, isn't it? And I'm not talking about the earlier Tiger. These earlier Tigers were coded in the PS series, which stood for Passenger Single Deck. In this video, we'll be looking at the former Leyland B43 and latterly the TR range Leyland Tigers. Now, it's fair to say that by the mid-1970s, the Leyland Leopard was getting a little bit long in the tooth, as of course was the AEC Reliance, which was now under the Leyland banner as well. Now, that's not to say that either of them were falling in popularity, because they weren't. They both remained incredibly popular vehicles, indeed with a wide range of customers, and this would cover both coaching use as well as bus use. At the 1978 Motor Show in Helsinki, there was the appearance of DAB vehicles. Now, DAB was of course the Leyland subsidiary from Denmark, which featured turbocharged 980 engines. Now, there seemed to be a flurry of turbocharged engines going into various different vehicles within the Leyland group. Now, although turbocharged engines certainly weren't a new thing, look at the Leyland National, which came into production in 1972, their use had been slowly gaining momentum throughout the 1970s. Apart from the 500 series, as has been fitted to the Leyland National, Leyland offered the 0690 engine, which was a turbocharged version of the 0680. This being the well-respected and much-loved engine that had been fitted to the Leyland Atlantean and the Leyland Leopard, as well as some of the fleet lines. Incidentally, it was the 0690 turbocharged engines that were fitted onto London Transport's B20 fleet. The 0690 engine would eventually morph into the TL11 engine. However, we are starting to get a little bit ahead of ourselves here. In the late 1970s, Leyland built a development vehicle, and this was coded B3301. It had a Leyland Leopard PSU 3C4R chassis and a Plaxton body shell. However, this was fitted with the turbocharged 0690 engine, which developed about 210 brake horsepower at 2000 RPM. As a development vehicle, this provided an awful lot of useful data to Leyland. This vehicle ended up being sold to Kings of Dunblane and was trimmed out by Plaxton and registered FLS 862V. Now, in a previous video, we looked at the Wallace Arnold story and how Leyland ignored Wallace Arnold during the launch of the Leyland Tiger, which then resulted with Wallace Arnold, who at the time was a massive customer for Leyland, moving over to Volvo chassis for their coaches. But again, before this, in happier times, in the summer of 1980, a TL11 engine was installed in a 1978 Leyland Leopard, and this type was a PSU 5C4R Leopard, and it was registered XWX194S, which was owned by Wallace Arnold. By now, it was known that Leyland was developing a new type of vehicle that had the similar sort of specification to these development vehicles that had been used over the last few years. But at the moment, it was only known as the B43. Incidentally, during the development of the B43 project, Leyland regularly held discussions with a working party of operators, members of the Confederation of Passenger Transport from 1977 onwards, and this was in order to make sure that the new coach and bus design met with their practical requirements of what they wanted in a vehicle. The first B43 chassis was shown by Leyland at the 1980 Motor Show. The chassis frame was a conventional flat-topped and bolted structure with outriggers lined up to all the cross members so that a bodybuilder could, if they wanted to, mount a saloon floor directly onto the frame. There were options for wheelbases of 6.1 metres and 5.64 metres, and offers for lengths of 12 metres and 11 metres. The suspension would be air. The B43 was fitted with a horizontal TL11 engine which developed 218 brake horsepower at 2100 RPM. Now Leyland did intend to offer a higher powered version later on, but there was a little bit of an issue with this because one of the main criticisms with the Leopard was the lack of a Gardner engine. Indeed, Leyland were very reluctant to fit Gardner engines to any of their original native chassis. And by that I mean vehicles like the Atlantean, the Leopard, the Leyland National. And it was such a popular engine with most companies within the bus industry during the 50s, the 60s and the 70s, and even into the 1980s to be fair. It was an enormously reliable engine and it gave great fuel economy figures. Now there were models within the Leyland catalogue such as the Fleet line and the Bristol VRT that offered Gardner engines, but these had been inherited designs rather than pure Leyland designs. And it would seem that the B43 was going to be another one of these designs that didn't feature an option for a Gardner engine. Now I know they'd drawn up the B15 Leyland Titan with a Gardner engine option, but that was after trialling it with a fixed head 500 series engine in the back. In fact, it would only be into the Titan and the Olympian era that the Gardner engine option would become standard on Leyland chassis. The standard gearbox on the B43 was the same 5-speed wide ratio pneumocyclic as on the Leyland Leopard. However, there was also an option for a ZF S6-80 synchromesh gearbox, but this was close coupled to the engine rather than being a little way away as it is on the Leopard. This would allow more space so a retarder could be fitted or a spare wheel carrier between the power unit and the rear axle. This would also provide more space for side lockers. The chassis was fitted with a front-mounted radiator which was cooled by a hydraulically driven fan. The chassis featured what was at the time the standard Leyland driving compartment, which was similar to the National and to the Titan. The front axle was the 6.35 tonne unit which had been standard on the 12 metre long Leopard and the Leyland Worldmaster, whilst the rear axle was a Maudsley unit and was also carried over from the Leopard, and this had the same choice of ratios as the Leopard as well. There was also an option for an Eaton axle as well, which was the axle of choice of DAB. Now at the motor show, Leyland specifically made a point of not giving the chassis a name and stated that the Leopard would continue in production for as long as there was a demand for the design. At the motor show, Eastern Scottish placed an order for 8 B43s off the drawing board, and these would be for the overnight express services between Edinburgh and London. These would also be fitted with duple bodywork, which featured the parallelogram, I think I said that right, windows. Basically, these are the windows that look like a Greyhound coach. In March 1981, Leyland was ready to officially launch the new chassis. The motor industry press, the dealers and of course the operators were invited to Gibraltar and Morocco, where the B43 was at last announced to carry the name Leyland Tiger. Now, as I mentioned before, the Tiger name had been used previously, but it was one of a fine pedigree, as the original Tiger had been a big success. At the launch, the full range of the Leyland Tiger was announced, and these would be the following. There would be 2 bus versions and 2 coach versions. The bus versions would be the TRB TL11.2R and 2L. Now, Leyland codes are quite straightforward to crack once you know what you're looking for. So obviously the TR stands for Tiger, the B stands for bus, and the TL11 obviously refers to the fact it's got a TL11 engine in it. The 2R refers to it being an 11.3 metre right-hand drive model, and the 2L would refer to it being an 11.3 left-hand drive version. The other bus version was the TRB TL11.3R, which was the 12 metre long version. And this again was also coded with the optional 3L for the left-hand drive models. The coach versions had the same coding, except that the B was replaced by a C for coach, so they became TRC TL11.2R and TRC TL11.3R. 3 of the Leyland Tiger coaches went to Morocco for appraisal at the launch, and all were of the 12-metre long length, as production of the longer Tiger commenced first. These coaches were FRN 801W, which was a Leyland demonstrator which was bodied by Plaxton, and FRN 816W, which was another demonstrator which had been bodied by Van Hool. The third and final coach was BSG 544W, and this was one of the new duple coaches for Eastern Scottish that I mentioned previously. FRN 801W, the Plaxton bodied coach, was the only one that had a synchromesh gearbox, both the others being fitted with the semi-automatic unit. Now, this launch under the hot Moroccan sun might have seemed a little bit extravagant. However, it did produce immediate results. Now, when you think of the way that the majority of coach operators worked at that time as well, many of the operators preferred to take delivery in the first 5 months of the calendar year, obviously because it would set them up with new coaches for the summer. So when you think that the Tiger became available after this main buying period for 1981, it actually did really well, because by the end of 1981 there were over 100 in service. During this time, other coaches for Eastern Scottish, which were registered BSG 545 to 551W, were delivered and entered service. Bostocks of Congleton, and I hope I said that right, became the first independent to take a Leyland Tiger with BCA 126W, and this was fitted with a duple bodywork. The first Plaxton bodied Tigers went to Appleby's of Conisholm in Lincolnshire, and again I hope I've pronounced that right. Moving into 1982, production of the Tiger had started well and was in full flow, meaning that Leyland would catch that first 5 months of the year where coach companies placed their orders. Many companies who operated the Leopard, such as OK Motor Services, Robinsons of Great Harwood and Grey Green, switched over to the Tiger, whilst companies like Premier Travel, Armchair of Brentford and Yellowway of Rochdale, who'd been big operators of the AEC Reliance, also switched over to the Leyland Tiger. The Scottish Bus Group ordered a further Leyland Tigers with duple bodywork, and this featured the new Goldliner high floor bodywork. Examples of the Tiger found their way into the fleets of Western Scottish Motor Traction, Eastern Scottish and Alexander Northern fleets. Alexander Northern took a very distinctive Leyland Tiger which was bodied with duple dominant coachwork, and this was registered KSL 41X. And it was fitted to a very high standard as a team coach for Aberdeen Football Club. It featured such luxuries as 28 reclining seats, a toilet, an aircraft-style galley with a microwave oven, a fridge, a sink, a toilet, and 2 video screens. It also had a demountable bed and a full burglar alarm system. You could actually live in that coach, couldn't you? That would have been quite a nice one to have. Other Leyland Tigers for the Scottish Bus Group included batches with Alexander T-type bodies to Central Scottish Motor Traction and Eastern Scottish. Late in 1981, the 11-metre-long Tiger became available, and it started to appear the following spring in 1982. And one of the first customers was Merseyside PTE, who bought 12 with duple coachwork for stage work and private hire work as well. Southend took 2 similar Tigers, and later in the year Lothian received 4. An uprated version of the Leyland Tiger was made available in 1982, with them being able to squeeze 245 brake horsepower out of the TL11 engine. Now, this was achieved by increasing the turbocharger pressure, and this option wasn't available with the pneumocyclic gearbox, with initially only the ZF manual gearbox being offered. But by the midsummer of 1982, the hydrocyclic unit was available as an option. Eastern Coachworks became another bodybuilder to body the Leyland Tiger, building bodies for the National Bus Company, One of the subsidiaries that received them was London Country. Indeed, we've looked at the ECW B51 bodywork, and it's, to be fair, not ECW's finest hour. And many of them were later rebodied, including many of the Green Line coaches, which were rebodied as buses. However, these weren't the first Leyland Tiger buses. By 1982, the Tiger had established itself as not only a coach, but also a successful bus in the domestic market. In 1982, several of the National Bus Company's subsidiaries placed Leyland Tigers into service. And in 1983, the order for the National Bus Company was well over 200 Tigers. Also during 1983, the Scottish Bus Group returned for more Leyland Tigers, ordering 42, which had a mixture of service, dual purpose and luxury coachwork. During this time, the number of operators operating the Leyland Tiger continued to grow, with companies such as West Yorkshire and Greater Manchester PTE, Newport, Nottingham, Derby and British Airways. Now I'm going to roll back a little bit, because in 1980 Leyland started work on a project known as the B50. This would morph into the Leyland Royal Tiger. However, as this is a completely different sort of vehicle, I will do a separate video on this. If you're interested, of course, please comment down below if you'd like a video on the Leyland Royal Tiger. Now, if you remember earlier on, I said that the Gardner engine wasn't an original option on the Tiger. Well, in 1983, Leyland did a complete U-turn and offered the option of a Gardner engine on the Tiger. Now, this was due to the request of the Scottish Bus Group, and there was a choice between the 6LXB unit, or that should be the 6HLXB unit, shouldn't it, because the engine would be on its side, and the 6HLXCT turbocharged unit. Tigers were not just bodied as buses and coaches, there was at least two that were bodied as Pantechnicon removal lorries. In 1987, a further engine option was offered with the Cummins L10 engine, this becoming the more common option from the late 1980s. This type of engine was normally accompanied by the ZF automatic gearbox. In 1988, Leyland was acquired by Volvo, and from the following year, a Volvo engine was also offered in the Leyland Tiger, this being the TDH 100 engine, as was fitted in the Volvo B10M. At the same time, the Gardner engine option and the original TL11 engine options were quietly dropped. The Leyland Tiger also proved to be a very popular vehicle in Australia as well, with many new and second-hand ones finding their way into the Australian market, including some slightly different models to what we would normally see in the UK, these being 3-axle Leyland Tigers, as well as the sole articulated Leyland Tiger, which had been built way back in 1985. Now, when Volvo bought Leyland, it brought the two best-selling coach chassis in the UK under the common ownership of Volvo, these being, of course, the Leyland Tiger and the Volvo B10M. However, Volvo realised that there was a loyal following for the Leyland mark in the UK and decided not to do anything rash at that precise moment. But producing two broadly similar chassis is never going to be a viable business proposition, is it? And interestingly, the Tiger now found itself in the position that its predecessor was, the Leyland Leopard. When Leyland took over AEC, and the AEC Reliance and the Leyland Leopard, which had been long-running competitors, were now being built under the same family. And whilst Leyland had sold a very credible 3,500 Leyland Tigers since its launch, Volvo had sold a whopping 20,000 B10Ms during the same sort of period. So however much it pains you, and it pains me, to see the end of a Leyland product such as the Tiger, you can see it makes business sense to get rid of the one that's sold the less units, and that sadly was the Leyland Tiger. The last one off the production line became YXI 1479, and this was delivered to Citybus in Northern Ireland. This was fitted with Alexander Belfast bus bodywork and seated 51 passengers. and was delivered in January 1993. In the end, a credible 4,549 Leyland Tiger chassis was built, with indeed pretty much all the last ones being for Ulster Bus and City Bus, where they were fitted not only with the aforementioned Alexander bodywork, but also with Wright bodywork as well. Over the years, there's been several oddball Leyland Tigers made, including this one. This was a rear-engined Leyland Tiger, would you believe it? And it was designed to be the prototype of what would be a large number built for export. And these would be fitted with Eastern Coachworks completely knocked down bodywork, and were destined for Thailand. However, apparently flooding in Thailand made the model unacceptable for use out there, and the idea was dropped. Now, this was the sole dual dominant bus-bodied Leyland Tiger that went to Ribble, and it's believed that this was used as a testbed for the Leyland Lynx project. Perhaps you know more about these interesting two vehicles, and there's maybe some more testbed vehicles out there that I've not mentioned. If I've missed any out, just comment down below. Let me know if you know any more information about these vehicles. Just comment down below. Many Leyland Tigers found their way onto the second-hand market once their initial operator had finished use with them, where they proved to be very popular buys. However, with similar aged Volvo B10M coaches also coming onto the second-hand market, they had competition from their old stablemate once again. I do hope you enjoyed this potted history of this incredibly successful Leyland coach chassis. And whilst it wasn't produced in the vast numbers that the Leyland Atlantean was, it was a very fitting swan song for Leyland in their final fling. So now, dear viewer, I am going to hand this over to you. What are your memories of the Leyland Tiger? Did you used to drive them? Did you work under them, on them? Did you used to travel on them? I have only driven one Leyland Tiger, and that is B124BOO, the ex-Headingham example that's owned by my friend Paul. And I was going to tell you an interesting story about Baz, the Leyland Tiger at Eastern Ways, but then I discovered that that was a Leyland Royal Tiger, so I've got to wind my neck in and keep that one for another day. Please remember, this is just a potted history, and I might have missed things out or left things out intentionally for the purpose of saving a few minutes in the video. If I have and I've left something out that's important for you, please comment down below and let me know, and I do apologise. It's hard to fit the whole history of a successful model like the Leyland Tiger into a 20-minute long video, and I do apologise once again. Having said that, if you did like this video, please like and share it. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel so that you don't miss out on my future releases in this and my other series here on YouTube. All money raised from YouTube goes to the upkeep and continued preservation of the buses in the Southern Counties Omnibus collection, and yes, we do have a Leyland Tiger in there. Once again, thank you so very much for watching. Bye for now.